That's right, Carol Danvers at one point managed to become Captain America. This has actually happened in more than one reality. She appears as Captain America in Venomverse War Stories and hails from the same reality as Venom Rocket, Earth 18197. In the story she appears in, Captain America, Carol Danvers, and Venom Rocket battle it out as Rocket is looking to cash in on a bounty for the Kree, who basically want Carol Danvers. Venom Rocket and Captain America seem pretty evenly matched here, but in the end, Rocket does not manage to capture Carol, and Carol seemingly ends up the victor of this match, though undoubtedly left with a big mess to clean up as the result of their destructive battle. Carol Danvers as Captain America still seemingly possesses some version of her Kree physiology and 616 power set here, making her a pretty powerful alternate version of Captain America, to be honest. I guess the other alternate name you could give to Carol Danvers Cap is Cap, because she's also Captain Marvel, and then so if she's Captain America, she's like a double cap. This version of Captain America comes from the Exile series, where he becomes King of the Vampires in the alternate reality of Earth 3931 during World War II as a result of Baron Blood. Vampire Cap is definitely not a good dude here, likely the most evil of all the monstrous Captain Americas that we see in the multiverse. This version of Captain America has its own sinister version of the Avengers and Thralls, who he enlists and forces to fight for him. However, he still proves to be no match for the Exiles, who end up defeating him and removing his head from his body here in the end, as the Exiles do. This version of Cap comes to us from the Marvel Zombies reality of Earth 2149. So many versions of Cap that are just monsters. Instead of being known as Captain America in this reality, he was actually originally known as Colonel America. Colonel America finds himself turned into a zombie in the initial fight against the Sentry here, near the beginning of this story. From there, his story gets pretty crazy. He is the one responsible for infecting Spider-Man, Peter Parker, with the virus. He also helps to take down Magneto, the Silver Surfer, and Galactus, and is one of the zombies who ends up receiving the power cosmic. He does end up defeated by the horrific zombified Red Skull though, who scoops out his brains. But with his brain not being consumed, as he, was also undead, and the undead apparently taste terrible to other zombies, he would later end up having his brain implanted in the body of Black Panther's deceased son in the future, T'Challa. Yeah, Marvel Zombies, it gets pretty weird. Soldier Supreme is what you get when you combine the mystical powerhouse of Doctor Strange with the all-American war hero Captain America. The result is a character who happens to be tough, strong, fast, and a gifted fighter while also possessing tons of mystical knowledge and ability. Soldier Supreme hails from Warp World, the reality created by Gamora when she folded the universe in half using the power of the Infinity Stones. Here, Steve Rogers participated in the Super Soldier program, which was really a front for something less scientific and more magical in nature. Conducting a series of rituals, Dr. Morgan Erskine transformed Steven Rogers into the Soldier Supreme. Super Soldier hails from the Amalgam universe, stories and characters created using the combined lore of DC Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains, and Marvel Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains. Super Soldier himself is an alternate version created by combining the heroes Captain America from Marvel and Superman from DC. Put those together and you get Clark Kent. Clark Kent ended up in the Super Soldier program during World War II, which used alien DNA taken from a corpse that was discovered to alter Clark Kent permanently, granting him superhuman powers. He has the combined power set of both Cap and Supes, making him pretty crazy powerful, although he also comes with his own highly dangerous villain as well, the Green Skull, and his very own weakness to the ore known as Green K. Not an alternate version of Steve Rogers, but an alternate version of Red Skull, who beat Rogers and took to wearing his suit often enough around his newly redecorated Oval Office. This alternate version of Red Skull comes from the Old Man Logan universe, where Red Skull ends up appointing himself the new president of the United States, which he of course renames America with a K. Red Skull ends up not just defeating Captain America, but almost all of the superhero community when he manages to rally together an impossible to defeat force of supervillains who basically coordinate their attack on the nation. Being that he's Red Skull, he's probably one of the most evil versions of Captain America that we've ever seen, although like I said, he's not really a full Cap alternate really, but he's the closest, albeit most twisted version we have, sadly, after Cap dies in the Old Man Logan universe, and he's a pretty cool one to have, because just seeing him in the suit and everything, it's a vibe. It's a messed up vibe, but it's a vibe. Some folks may know Cap Wolf, sure, but how many know the version of him that is stuck as Cap Wolf? For many, Cap Wolf is more of a time in Steven Rogers' life. For Cap Wolf of Earth 666 though, That's his everyday. On Earth 666, the Earth is exclusively inhabited by monsters, supernatural beings, or undead. The normal average living person is not welcome in this reality. Cap Wolf, for his part, has been a part of a few different teams, but has still only made a handful of appearances. He has appeared as a member of the Multiversal Howling Commandos and Multiversal Avengers team, and he has also been a member of his Earth's own Freaky Avengers team, which of course, because their Earth has like all monsters and undead, that Avengers team is all monsters and undead. An evil clone with the mind of Red Skull. To be honest, this has happened multiple times in the comics, where Red Skull has ended up having his consciousness, personality, or memories put into a clone of Steve Rogers. It's happened both in the main continuity and in alternate universes. It's just a thing that happens, and people think it's interesting, so we keep doing it. In issue number 350 of Captain America, the Red Skull in Steve Rogers' clone body ends up being the mastermind behind the whole Jonathan Walker, aka US agent, and commission issue that happened around that time. Red Skull's plan this time around in Steve Rogers' clone body is to discard his previous ideologies and actually use America's capitalist system to dismantle the democracy of the nation and destroy it. It doesn't work out in the end, and the issue actually ends up with him facing off against both John Walker and the Captain, and becoming deformed once more by the red dust of death. We can't let Red Skull win, unless it's an alternate reality. Then maybe. In the Age of X universe, the mutant population becomes feared after an explosion that looks identical to the Phoenix leveled Albany. As a result, mutants were hunted, rounded up, and disposed of. In response to this, the mutant Magneto uses his powers to take several buildings from New York and form his own Fortress X, a sort of safe haven for all mutant kind to flock to, and for them to like kind of have a base that they can defend to protect themselves. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Frank Castle, who were of course led by Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. The team was made up of Captain America, Ghost Rider, who was killed before the actual assault on Fortress X happened, the Hulk, Invisible Woman, this universe's Jessica Drew, known by the codename Redback, and Iron Man, aka Steel Corpse. While the team murdered a lot of mutants, Cap eventually was persuaded to change sides and fight instead to defend the mutants after realizing the error of his ways when he took out Mystique, who it turned out had been actually just attempting to defend mutant children. I mean, yeah. Obviously Cap's gonna be like, wait a minute, maybe I'm fighting on the wrong side here. This version of Steve Rogers is the leader of the Defenders, the last standing heroic group against Apocalypse and his horsemen who have seized control of Earth and turned it into a wasteland of death, following the demise of both Magneto and Professor Xavier. This version of Cap looks like a tank, is much more determined and grim, and fights with Wolverine at his side, armed with a chipped shield and Thor's hammer and what appears to be a scaled armor version of his suit. And he hails from What If? X-Men Age of Apocalypse.
Number 10, Red Skull. Yeah, I bet you never thought you'd see the day. Obviously, this one ranks so low on the list because of, well, just how despicable this whole thing is, despite the fact that it actually makes for quite an interesting story. Red Skull becoming Captain America and later President of the United States happens, of course, in a what if story. Where else would this happen? In this what if, following the end of World War II, both Hitler and Red Skull are believed to have been defeated, but dun dun dun, Red Skull actually survived. Making sure that Steve Rogers was lost at sea after the war was won, Red Skull plotted to manipulate people under the guise of Steve Rogers himself. Red Skull transferred his mind into a clone of Rogers and set about impersonating him, using Rogers' trustworthy reputation and influence to his advantage. Eventually, the real Captain America, however, did return and would end up putting a stop to evil President Red Skull Cap and his army of super soldiers. I feel like anytime you have a Captain America that's like, I'm gonna make an army of super soldiers, you should probably be suspicious of that Cap, because I feel like that's not a thing that Steve would normally do. Number 9, Clark Kent. But not exactly the Clark Kent you're thinking of. In the Amalgam universe, Clark Kent is a normal human who ends up becoming an alternate version of Captain America, known as Super Soldier, after he is given a serum that was created from the blood of an alien baby who crash landed on planet Earth. Also, I feel like it's really weird that they took an alien baby's blood and made a serum with it. But I digress. This is a pretty dark story in my opinion. While this version might not hold the title of Captain America, he definitely looks the part, well, minus his S for Super Soldier shield, and is meant to be like a version of both Captain America and Superman combined, cause amalgam. He also comes with his own villains such as Green Skull and Lex Luthor, who in this world is actually the head of Hydra. Hail Hydra, says Lex Luthor. Alright friends, before we move on to this next point, if you are enjoying hearing about all these different people that have been Captain America, feel free to give this video a thumbs up and show it. Number 8, James Newman. James Newman became Captain America for a brief moment in time, or really it's more like Captain America took hold of him, I guess. In the alternate reality of Earth 7116, Captain America finds himself rapidly aging and dying. As he loses his strength, he decides to work with specialists and participate in a sort of experiment that allows him to reach out like a sort of Force ghost to other military groups. Even after he passes on, Captain America's ghost is seen by James Newman and him alone while serving in Afghanistan. Cap helps to bolster James's courage and strength when he needs it most, helping him to believe in himself and to perform heroic actions. After escaping a cave-in, Newman finds himself in the middle of an ambush, and Captain America possesses him briefly in order to help Newman not only survive, but defeat his attackers, leading Newman to state that he believes there is a bit of Captain America in all of us. Aw, what a sweet moral. You can be a hero too. It's true though, if you actually just were like, hey, I'm gonna be a hero today and do good things, you can do that. You should do that. Everyone should be a hero for a day every now and then. It's a nice way to help people out. Number 7, Cyclops. That's right, in the alternate future of what appears to be the Ultimate Universe, known as Earth 81122, an alternate of an alternate, we get an alternate Scott Summers and Jean Grey and Steve Rogers, who all find themselves at one point without powers. Rogers, in losing his powers, also ends up rapidly aging and dies. After his death, it was basically left to Scott Summers to take up the mantle, allowing the name of Captain America to live on, albeit briefly, because he dies. Scott dies. Scott Cap. Captain Scott Summers. Captain Scott Summers of America. Number 6, Roberta Mendez. One of the 2099 versions of Captain America. Roberta Mendez became Captain America unwillingly after her husband dosed her with the super soldier serum kind of against her will. In fact, Roberta didn't even know she was Captain America, as Cap and Roberta were actually basically two separate personas residing in the same body. Trigger words are usually deployed here to manipulate Roberta's mental state into switching between her Cap persona and just her everyday Roberta persona. This version of Captain America is part of Alchemax's Avengers and is believed to have the same level of durability and strength as her 616 counterpart, Steve Rogers. Number 5, The Punisher. That's right, in Marvel's marvelous world of what ifs, anything is possible, including a world where Frank Castle ends up being chosen to be Captain America instead of Steve Rogers. He does eventually get carried away like we are so used to seeing him do and attempt to go on a murderous rampage, but in the end is reined in by none other than Steve himself, who reminds him that he is a role model for all of America and that he basically has to be better. When Castle offers the mantle of Captain America to Rogers himself, he actually refuses, saying that Frank needs to be Cap because he is a living mortal man, which makes him, I guess, more relatable to the American people, because in this reality, Rogers is a cyborg. I guess we can't relate with cyborgs. I feel like that's a weird lesson. So yeah, Frank stays on as Captain America, and Steve goes on to fight crime as the Captain. Cyborgs can't be Captain America. How dare they? Number 4, Roscoe Simmons. Steve Rogers hasn't always been Captain America, and there have been a few times that his frustration with the government and the politics that sometimes comes along with the name has caused him to escape into another mantle, leaving the Captain America name and looking for someone to step in and replace him during his absence. Roscoe Simmons was a promising candidate given the seal of approval by Steve Rogers himself, who at the time was operating under the name Nomad, which you might remember from the MCU, because there's kind of a little Nomad reference in there. Falcon, Sam Wilson, even trained Simmons himself, but expressed concern as to if Simmons was really prepared enough to be Captain America. Falcon was worried that Roscoe might not only be hurt in the line of duty, but may even wind up dead. And he was right to be worried about that, turns out, because that is exactly what happened. When Red Skull learned that the Captain America he was facing was not in fact Steve Rogers, but his replacement, Roscoe Simmons, in a rage, he killed Simmons, seeking also to teach Rogers a lesson in the process about attempting to find a replacement and leave his mantle. Red Skull's like, you're my nemesis and you can never do anything else. Red Skull crucified Simmons and tortured him to death. Roscoe's death did inspire Steve to return as Captain America, despite his continuing frustration with the government. Roscoe Simmons, R.I.P. I feel bad for Roscoe Simmons. Number 3, John Walker. John Walker was the man chosen to replace Captain America after he quit. More permanently this time. Captain America decided to leave the mantle behind when he no longer felt it was a good idea to be working for the government, who at the time were quite corrupt. Although Steve Rogers would continue to operate as a hero, he wouldn't be able to use the name of Captain America as, well, it technically belonged to the federal government. Instead, he would become known as the Captain, and the US government would recast the heroic role of Captain America. John Walker ended up being the man they chose, who proved to be a much more violent and ruthless Captain America in comparison to Rogers, having no qualms about killing those who got in his way. In the end, Rogers was able to convince Walker of his misdeeds and even helped him to reform. Walker ended up giving the mantle back to Steve and would go on to become the redemption-seeking hero, US Agent. Number 2, Bucky Barnes. Also known as the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes was originally Captain America's young sidekick from way back in 1941. For years we thought Bucky was dead until Ed Brubaker brought him back as Russia's brainwashed operative and later on, by extension, Hydra's brainwashed assassin, where we'd come to know him as Winter Soldier. Fortunately, Captain America was able to give Bucky back his true mind and memories using the Cosmic Cube, and Bucky then set out on a mission of atonement, before being tossed into the position of Captain America himself, after Cap was suspected of being dead after being shot by a time-traveling bullet during the events of Civil War. True story. Bucky would take up Cap's shield, costume, and the name himself temporarily. Eventually, he would return to his Winter Soldier mantle after he was put on trial for the crimes that he'd committed in his former life, which honestly tend to have a way of coming back to haunt him no matter what good he does. I feel like Bucky's always haunted by those old Winter Soldier days. But that's fair, it's probably pretty traumatizing. Number 1, Falcon. Falcon was the chosen successor for the Captain America title in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with an elderly Steve Rogers who went back in time to live out his life with Peggy, passing on the shield to his friend Sam Wilson at the end of Endgame. And I guess near the end of his life, he was pretty old there. We don't know if this is something that will stick in the MCU, but in the comics, Sam Wilson has already stepped into Steve's shoes, serving as Captain America after Steve found himself rapidly aged. The major difference between Sam and Steve's approach to being Captain America is that Rogers preferred to stay out of politics, whereas Wilson believes that it's actually his duty to get involved in them. I personally think in the MCU what's going to happen is we're going to have US Agent, who's going to be the person that the government picks, and then Sam Wilson, they're going to be like, we don't care that Captain America passed the shield on to you. It's our mantle, we do what we want. But hopefully the government will come around and then Sam will get to be Captain America again. Or he'll convince John Walker like Steve did. Anyways, you're not coming here to hear my theories on Sam Wilson's future in the MCU, but that's what I think.
Number 10, Bullet Points. This was a limited comic series which ran from 2006 to 2007. It's an alternate reality story, but not a what if. Marvel does what it wants. Actually, what ifs have not been in continuous publication, but alternate reality storylines are pretty much a constant, hence how things like this happen. In this story, Dr. Erskine is killed before he can inject Steve Rogers with a Captain America serum. So in this universe, Steve never becomes Captain America. Instead, after Project Rebirth is cancelled, Steve is asked to join Project Iron Man, and he becomes permanently bonded to a suit of iron. And this suit looks like the original design created by Tony in Tales of Suspense number 39. This story is interesting and worth a read for sure, but it's not a strong showing for alternate Cap, because he's not Cap, he's Iron Man. Also, an Iron Man who gets killed by Spider-Man. How did that happen? Read it and find out. Number 9. Captain America from the movie in 1990. Now, there is much love for Captain America the First Avenger from 2011. However, that was not the first time Cap had hit the big screen. Far from it. Now, there were adaptations before the 1990s, however this one, oh man, this one is a cult bad movie classic.
Mr. President, Thanks.
This Cap is not very heroic at all. He steals a car by pretending to be carsick. It's cinematic gold.
Captain, are you okay? Hold it. Don't leave me out here.
He also drives around in a creepy unmarked van. Captain America. It's also got some very heavy-handed environmentalist messages and a hilarious over-the-top Red Skull who is eating all the scenery. So in short, go watch this movie and have a good time. Number 8. Vibram. This Cap comes to us from the 2005 series entitled Weapon X Days of Future Now. In this story, instead of being selected for Project Rebirth, Steve is selected for Weapon X, and he's given an adamantium skeleton and the codename Vibram. So actually, that's a fantastic name. That sounds cool, you may be saying. Why is he here? Well, he can be the coolest alternate Wolverine he wants, but he's not Cap. Number 7. Spider King. Again, great name. It conjures up so many images before you even see it. This is a retelling of Spider Island from the Secret Wars storyline. Again, the 2015 one, not the one from the 1980s. In this, Cap and the others are mutated into spider monsters, and Cap is taken by the Spider Queen to be her Spider King. Cause even as a spider, he's still Captain America. However, later he's transformed into Man-Wolf by the Godstone, which was a callback to Cap-Wolf. Number 6. Captain America. Captain America belongs to the world of Spider-Ham, who first debuted in Marvel Tales starring Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham in 1983, but was then given an ongoing series for a while, Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham. The Steve from this universe, Earth 8311, is Steve Mouser, who is actually a cat, for reasons. He works for the Daily Beagle, and moonlights as Captain America. So is he Superman? Kinda sorta, but also a cat with the name of a mouse. Oh come on, it's all in good fun. I kinda love it. Number 5. Marvel 2099. This is an imprint that ran in 1992, a year when there was nothing edgier than creating things that took place past the millennium. This imprint allowed for new alternate versions of characters and a redesigned future. Cap had an intriguing journey in this series. First, there was a fake Cap taken out by Doom 2099. Ultimately, Cap in this universe was Roberta Mendez, who was forced into taking the super soldier serum by her husband. She becomes the leader of Alchemax's Avengers. Roberta at the start doesn't know she's Captain America, with that persona operating as a split personality. She physically and mentally becomes Cap when someone says her trigger words, that being Avengers Assemble. Man, hopefully people don't just go around saying that like they do here. Of all the 2099 characters, Roberta wasn't the worst received, but nor was she the best. The whole 2099 imprint is a real mileage varies kind of thing. Some people love it, and others are kinda like, eh. Still, Marvel loves it, and they will revisit it and bring in characters from it pretty much whenever they do a big multi-universe event. Number 4. Mutant X. Oh, Mutant X, why can't I quit you? Also, does anyone else remember the series from 2001? It ran for 3 seasons, had 66 episodes, and I swear no one remembers it. Anyways, in the comics, Mutant X is a story arc that centers around Havoc in an alternate reality, where he is the leader of the X-Men and has to deal with that universe's threats. In this universe, Cap isn't Steve Rogers at all. Steve Rogers was killed by the Sentinel. Instead, Captain America is an unknown mutant who was chosen to take up the mantle, as the idea was that Captain America is a symbol, not a person. It doesn't matter who Captain America is, so long as they are there to inspire people. This Cap could manipulate energy and use it on his team of the 6 to help protect mutants from the Mutant X universe's evil Nick Fury, who wanted to eradicate all mutants and actually just all superpowered beings. However, this Cap goes insane and ultimately has to be taken down by his team. Steve would never. Who am I kidding? Steve totally would. Number 3. Captain Ape America of the Ape Avengers. So the Ape Avengers of Earth 8101 are just what you would expect, an all-ape version of the Avengers team. Appearing first in the series Marvel Apes back in 2008, this series was meant to follow up and capitalize on the success of the Marvel Zombies outing. It didn't quite get there. In this universe, Captain Ape America is evil. He's actually a counterpart to Baron Blood from Earth 616. In fact, the whole Ape Avengers are meant to be reformed supervillains, except for Baron Blood. He's not reformed at all. Number 2. Gladiator Cap. Gladiator Cap comes to us from The Exiles, a series that focused entirely around alternate versions of characters, traveling to different universes, meeting more alternate versions, and altering things in their timeline. In short, if you like this series, you should definitely read that. This Cap comes to us from the arc A World Apart, a world where the Skrulls invaded and conquered in the 19th century. Cap is a gladiator called the Captain, who is taken out by Mimic, who is angry that this Cap has become a puppet for the Skrulls. Cause you know, that's fair, judging alternates by the standards of your own timeline. Number 1. Hydra Cap. Okay, so Hydra Cap is such a meme at this point, there was even a joke about it in Endgame. But back during Secret Wars, when that line was first uttered, fans lost their minds. Taking the beloved symbol and hero Captain America and essentially turning him into everything he hated and fought against was not well received. So initially the concept was that all this time, Cap had been a sleeper Hydra agent, just waiting to be activated Manchurian Candidate style. Because Hydra went back in time with the Cosmic Cube, so that was always the timeline. So then the heroes had to alter it, this by going back with the cube, grabbing Cap from a splinter timeline and bringing him forward to battle against this Cap, Hydra Cap, who is ultimately captured but not before he killed Black Widow. But it's fine, her clone was implanted with her memories, so it all worked out. However, if you really think about it, in a way Hydra Cap is historical Cap and Splinter Cap is new Cap. Hail Hydra. The memes will never get old. Well, for me anyway, they probably will for other people. Maybe they're already old.
Number 10. Yeoman America. Back in Avengers Volume 3 Number 2 in January of 1998, Morgan Le Fay's reality distortion wave caused the time period to be altered to a medieval setting which altered the Avengers' clothing, speech patterns, and thought processes. For Steven Rogers, he became Yeoman America, a knight-like soldier with red, blue, and white stars and stripes armor, and weapons including a sword and a more fantasy-like shield. Now, to be clear, this is just regular 616 Captain America, but magically time displaced. So he's got all of his same abilities, but something about wearing a suit of armor and wielding a sword like that makes him just kind of better than himself? In my opinion, I don't know. Number 9. Hydra Cap. While this version of Captain America did appear largely in the 616 reality, he's actually technically from an alternate timeline created by a Hydra brainwashed Cubic who used her reality warping powers to make Captain America his ideal self. Since she was being influenced by Hydra, his ideal self was a Captain America who grew up being made loyal to Hydra. This Cap would eventually supplant the real Captain America of 616 and would organize the second superhuman civil war, as well as Chitauri invasions on the Earth. He got promoted to director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and influenced the legalization of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Act, which gave S.H.I.E.L.D. way more authority. He used this new power to basically organize a Hydra takeover of America, with Steve becoming the Hydra Supreme and bringing on the Secret Empire event. He was defeated by the proper version of Captain America, brought back by Cubic, but this Steve manipulated his way into an extremely high position of power, banishing mutants, imprisoning Inhumans, creating a Hydra Avengers team, and forcing other heroes into the underground. Number 8. Peggy Carter. If you've seen the Marvel Studios What If show, you know alternate versions of Peggy Carter get the super soldier serum in place of Steven Rogers. Fans love this idea, even if it's strange for a British agent to become Captain America. There are a few different versions of Captain Carter to choose from, but they all generally share the same abilities. There was a version of the character who appeared in Exiles number 3 in 2018 who had a great costume. The one in the Disney Plus show joined the Guardians of the Multiverse, so she was clearly an exceptional version of the character. She's also shown up in a new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie sporting a jetpack, and was able to give the villain of that movie a real good run for their money, while other more powerful characters were felled instantly. She can be a bit more hot-headed than her Steve Rogers counterpart, sure, but she has the power of fan love. And if you know anything about what that power can do, you know that Peggy Carter as Captain America is very powerful. Number 7. MCU Captain America. I find it hard to be able to put most of the MCU iterations of characters into a list of most powerful versions of themselves. The MCU tends to depower a lot of their characters, which I suppose is understandable from a storytelling perspective. But when this version of Cap wields Mjolnir and smacks around Thanos for a little while, nearly beating him all on his own, a feat the Hulk could not even achieve, and then fights the army Thanos brought with him, all with minimal training wielding the power of Thor, it's honestly a sight to behold. I almost wish they showed us Cap going through time, fixing all the branched timelines the Avengers had created. It would have been so cool seeing the ways he could use the hammer. Imagine Captain America flying through the air with his shield in one hand and being dragged by Mjolnir in the other. It would just be really cool. Number 6. Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually become the Captain America of her time. And Well, let's just think about this for a second. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factor of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America. She is the shield. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she is a Captain America who deserves to be on this list. Number 5. Earth X. If you haven't read Earth X, well, do it. But the basic premise is that in this alternate reality, the people of the Earth all begin to gain mutant abilities. And in the words of Syndrome from The Incredibles, and when everyone's super, no one will be. Captain America specifically was a bit more tragic in this story. For starters, he felt unworthy as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. But this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man. So this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. But it's when he passed on that he actually became more powerful. Cap turned into one of Marvel's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. His wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually looked like himself. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded an extremely cool sword, but we don't know what its capabilities really are because he never used it. He is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 4. Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together, we get a look at 2 who have not been seen before. But the one I want to talk about here is Kiyoshi Morales, the great-grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th century's Commander A. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the biggest among the Captain Americas gathered by Toth Key in Captain America Corps No. 1 from 2011. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America stand-in. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into the wireless systems and stored information of the world. He had all the enhancements we'd expect, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see in the future. But for now, he is definitely my favorite of the members of the Captain America Corps. Number 3. Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, it seems that Captain America's treatment with the Super Soldier Serum actually seemed to give him a bit more of an edge in terms of his powers. For example, while this universe's Hulk is a bit weaker than the 616 version, he is still incredibly strong. But this Captain America was able to go toe-to-toe for a few rounds against the Hulk, almost actually defeating him and eventually knocking him out, which is like 616 Cap could never do that. Ultimate Cap also seemed pretty capable of handling armies of guys all on his own. He was an extremely capable leader while also being a bit more than a little ruthless compared to his 616 counterpart. Like when he was fighting against the Chitauri Herr Kleiser, his rival. He resorted to traumatizing Bruce Banner to get him to turn into the Hulk and then convincing him that Kleiser was getting it on with Betty Ross so that Hulk would pummel Kleiser into the concrete and then eat him. That kind of wholesome stuff. Nice. Number 2. Soldier Supreme. A Cap-wielding Mjolnir? Cool. But how about a Cap with the mystical and magical powers of the Sorcerer Supreme? Well, we get that in Infinity Warps, when Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, basically folds reality in half, merging characters with other characters. One of the two merged together, in case you didn't catch on, is Captain America Steve Rogers and the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Stephen Strange. The result would be Stephen, with a PH, Rogers, the Soldier Supreme. He fought in World War II against the German hell priest Dormammu Red, and would use his super enhancements and military training alongside his mystical and magical abilities. During World War II, he teamed up with his Howling Commandos of Hoggoth, including Dum Dum Fury and Bucky Wong. Later, in the modern era, after returning from banishment in the Negative Zone, he would team up with Iron Hammer, Arachnite, and Weapon Hex to battle against Devondra. Number 1. Super Soldier. Seems like when you take one character and smush them together with another character, you get a pretty OP new character. Like Soldier Supreme, or Cap-wielding Mjolnir, or even Danielle Cage to a degree. But what if you took Captain America and you fused him together with one of the strongest characters in all of comic books? Well, in the Amalgam universe where Marvel characters are mixed in with DC Comics characters, we got Super Soldier. And if you haven't guessed by now, this is Captain America mixed together with Superman. When Clark Kent volunteered for the Super Soldier program, he was injected with a Super Soldier serum containing cellular kryptonite samples from an alien, while also being doused in solar radiation. The result was a power set unheard of for any other Captain America. Super strength over 1 million tons. Invulnerability to everything but green K, as it's called. Superhuman stamina to the point of being completely tireless. He can fly at speeds of around Mach 10. He has superhuman speed at speeds of about 2,000 miles per second. He can hear and smell anything on Earth. He has a sonic scream that allows Clark to destroy someone's literal essence. No need to eat or sleep. He can heal instantly from most any injury due to his altered metabolism. Clark can create hurricane-level winds by blowing and can also chill his breath to project ice from his mouth. And he has extremely hot heat vision. I think that pretty much covers it, and I don't really need to say more. But you take all that and put it in the mind of an expert tactician and soldier, it's game over for you, buddy.
Number 10. American Civil War. In What If Captain America #1, Captain America first actually appeared in 1863 as a member of the Union in the American Civil War. This version of the Cap didn't actually receive his enhancements from a super soldier serum like he does in the mainline continuity. Instead, after being mortally wounded with an encounter with an exceedingly evil and racist version of Bucky Barnes, he is reborn by a version of Sam Wilson, who was taken in by the Shawnee, and who conjures an ancient eagle spirit that makes both Rogers and Barnes the same on the outside as they are on the inside. His suit was more Civil War era appropriate, wearing a coat, pants, and boots of the era. His classic helmet was replaced by more of a headdress, with a shield made of an unknown bulletproof material. This version of Captain America could actually summon a spirit eagle that would fight on his behalf. The uniform was supposed to represent unity of all the peoples of America, which is what this Captain America fought for. Number 9. Spirit of 76. When the original Captain America and Bucky Barnes went missing in action in 1945, the role of Captain America was kept alive by William Naslund, who was formerly the hero known as the Spirit of 76. First showing up in Captain America Comics number 49, William took on the role after being asked by President Truman. He was given a version of the uniform that was extremely similar to the original. The only real difference is the shield. That wasn't the original indestructible one. It instead was made of steel. William Naslund himself dedicated himself to being on par with the original Captain America. He just didn't have the powers. The suit's main function was to keep the idea of Captain America alive after the original's death. It also explained for comic fans why he was still around in active service after he supposedly died. So there's that. Number 8. The Captain. First appearing as just the Captain in Captain America number 337, Steve Rogers found himself unable to merely follow orders as a simple soldier, especially after the events of the government that led to him becoming nomad. He resigned the Captain America mantle, even surrendering his shield to the new Captain America John Walker. He took up a new adamantium-based shield, and with a new uniform, he went on as a subtly different titled hero. His suit as the Captain was black instead of blue, with a red and white striped chest and red gloves and boots. The suit itself did nothing different on its own, but it allowed him to continue fighting as a hero, and eventually it was passed on to John Walker when he became US agent. Hold up guys, I just want to say a quick thanks for watching. If you could toss your shields at that like and subscribe button, it would really help us out here. Also, while I have your attention, I wanted to just let you all know about Top 10 Nerd on Facebook. If you head over there, you can find more content from us. Alright, enough promotion, on to the rest of the list. Number 7. Bucky Barnes. We spoke about Sam Wilson taking up the Captain America mantle in the last video, but what about when Bucky donned the shield back in 2000? 2005. After Steve Rogers' assassination, Bucky got Captain America's shield after defeating Black Widow and eventually confronting Tony Stark, who he held responsible. After a fight, it was decided that Bucky would be the new Captain America. Bucky outfitted himself with an alternate version of Cap's costume built by Tony Stark. The new adamantium laced uniform looked pretty good, with more of a V-shaped flag design. The costume also includes a lot of black, kind of reflecting Bucky's darker nature, or even reflecting the tragic way he came into the mantle in the first place. As Cap, Bucky also wielded a pistol, which is strange to see on a Captain America, but it also makes sense for Bucky's character on the whole. Number 6. Peggy. We all know who Peggy Carter is thanks to the MCU, and if you've seen the What If show, you know alternate versions of her get the super soldier serum in place of Steve Rogers. Logically, this would make her a Captain Britain, which she is one of them as well, but a version of her appearing in Exiles number 3 in 2018 decided to become Captain America. I honestly like her Captain America costume a lot. It looks cool with the collared shirt underneath and with the shoulder straps, but it also plays to Peggy's more tactical approach, more spy and espionage vibes, I think. Plus, it's just a great concept. Number 5. Secret Avengers. When Steve Rogers became Commander Rogers of the Secret Avengers, he adopted a new suit design. It's actually very similar to and was the inspiration for the MCU Captain America Winter Soldier suit. The suit itself is more subtle, featuring a darker blue color with a silver star emblem and stripe design. It reflects the serious, darker tone of both the Secret Avengers stories and that MCU movie. In the movie, it is referred to as the stealth suit and offers more maneuverability and a more Kevlar armored design. It's also Chris Evans' favorite suit. It's a suit that allows Steve to step out of the role of Captain America, always doing what is expected, and instead act as himself and make the tough calls. Number 4. Iron Cap. This alternate version of Cap first appears in Bullet Points number 1. After Dr. Erskine was assassinated, the Super Soldier Serum program had to be scrapped, and Steve Rogers, still wanting to serve his country, agreed to join a program that saw him medically grafted to a giant suit of Iron Man armor. Obviously, this is different from most other normal Cap suits. This suit resembled the first few iterations of the Iron Man armor, with many of its capabilities. The suit, however, took a huge toll on Steve, who even went through rigorous stamina and strength training. He was eventually killed in the suit when he was sent on a mission to subdue the Peter Parker version of Hulk. The story, Bullet Points, is really interesting, serving up alternate versions of characters in interesting ways. Check it out if you have the chance. The art is also amazing. Number 3. Danielle Cage. As the child of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, Danielle Cage has a lot to live up to. In one possible future, and many others, Danielle exceeded all the expectations by taking up the mantle of Captain America. She was among the heroes who were summoned to the future to end All-Father Ultron's tyrannical reign. First appearing in US Avengers number 1, Danielle herself inherited the bulletproof nature of her father, Luke Cage. So that's one thing that her, and by extension her suit, has over the usual Captain America uniform. But she also inherited the powers of her mother. She's one tough gal. Another interesting point about her is that her shield is a replica of the original Cap shield that is also a voice-commanded drone. But as she always reminds her villains, she doesn't just throw the shield, she is the shield. Number 2. Gladiator Cap. In the battle world, there are many lands that hold mystery and enchantment, but none as much or with as much savageness as the Green Land. First appearing in Planet Hulk number 1, this version of Captain America is a fighter in the battle world Colosseum on the outskirts of Doomstat, and he fights alongside a giant red T-Rex named Devil. That, just right there, is enough to sell me on this comic. This version of Cap wields a battle axe, alongside a shield that I'm assuming is not vibranium, but it takes a beating, so who knows? He also wears battle armor in true gladiator fashion with long blonde hair and no helmet. He is sent by God Emperor Doom and Sheriff Strange to go into the Green Land, which is basically inhabited by Hulks, and eliminate the Red King, who's a Red Hulk. It's Gladiator Steve Rogers with a battle-bound T-Rex. Just do yourself a favor and check it out. Number 1. Commander A, or Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together, we get a look at 2 who have not yet been seen before. But the one I want to talk about here is Kiyoshi Morales, the great grandnephew of Luke Cage and the 25th century's Commander A. His uniform is quite unique, as is Kiyoshi himself, standing tallest and most imposing among the Captain Americas gathered by Toph Key. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, similar in appearance to the normal Captain America's. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America stand-in. It features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into wireless systems and it stores information.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Captain America of the Revolutionary War, Stephen Rogers. Now, this version of the character is a bit arguable of whether they're canon or not, as they were initially introduced as an ancestor of the regular Marvel Universe's Steve Rogers, but since then have been treated as an alternate universe story. Fighting on the side of the Americans during the American Revolution, this Captain America had no superpowers of his own, but was just an experienced soldier with a shield fighting against an early incarnation of the Hellfire Club. In an oddly tragic twist, however, Stephen Rogers wound up dying in one of the last battles of the Revolutionary War when he was randomly struck by a stray cannonball. Not exactly the most heroic end for a Captain America, but hey, they can't all be as epic as Endgame. Coming in at number 9, we have John Walker, specifically the version seen in the Disney Plus show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Following Sam Wilson's rejection of taking on the role of Captain America and wielding the shield following the retirement of Steve Rogers, the American government attempts to turn combat veteran John Walker into the next generation Captain America. Unfortunately, John has a whole host of undiagnosed mental issues and feelings of inadequacy, and following the death of his partner Battlestar, he violently kills a civilian while being videotaped by the whole world. And although John had seemingly calmed down enough to be on the good guys team for the season finale, it looks like his future in the MCU might just be as a Dark Avenger, something very different than what Steve Rogers originally stood for. Coming in at number 8, we have Roberta Mendez, the Captain America of the year 2099. In a possible alternate future for the Marvel Universe, Roberta was the wife of an operative for Alchemax, a giant corporation with way too much control of future civilization. Roberta was forcefully injected with the super soldier serum by her husband without her knowledge, giving her all of the abilities of Captain America, but also fracturing her mind so that she would have no memory of her own exploits as a superhero. Wielding an energy shield and wings instead of the vibranium weapons of her predecessor, this new Captain America initially fought solely for Alchemax's Avengers team, but soon began to utilize her heroics for the good of everyone and not just for a giant corporation. Coming in at number 7, we have the Captain America from the Age of X event. This Captain America seemed to be mostly the same as the mainstream Marvel Universe's version, but with one clear difference. This guy hated mutants. With the Avengers serving as a team dedicated to wiping out, or at the very least capturing, all members of the X-Men and mutant kind, this version of Steve Rogers only began seeing the error of his ways after killing Mystique and realizing she was protecting a group of innocent mutant children. Horrified at what he'd been a part of, this Captain America would kill his friend Iron Man to stop the mutant slaughter, and was overall just a really weird and twisted take on a hero that usually always fights for the underdog. Coming in at number 6, we have Werewolf Captain America, an incident that actually happened to the real Steve Rogers rather than an alternate dimension counterpart. While investigating the disappearance of astronaut John Jameson alongside a slate of attacks that appeared to have been committed by a werewolf, Captain America was attacked by a mind-controlled Wolverine and knocked unconscious. Cap then found himself injected with a wolf serum by the villain Nightshade and transformed into a much furrier variant of his usual self. Unfortunately for Nightshade, Cap's leadership qualities didn't decrease in wolf form, and he quickly organized a rebellion amongst the other werewolves, overthrowing their master and finally finding a serum that could change them all back into human form. Coming in at number 5, we have the infamous Iron Cap. In the alternate universe of the Bullet Points miniseries, in which various Marvel heroes have had their origin stories all switched around, Steve Rogers is unable to take the super soldier serum, but volunteers for an experimental exoskeleton to join the war effort. Encased in an iron suit that has to be connected to his heart, Steve Rogers becomes both a captain and Iron Man, using his newfound technology-based strength to push back against the forces of Hydra and help the Allied forces win this universe's version of World War II. Coming in at number 4, we have the Captain America from Earth 9997. In this dark alternate universe, the doctor that gave Steve Rogers the super soldier serum was actually a Hydra agent working for the Red Skull undercover, and Steve Rogers was actually chosen because of his blonde hair and blue eyes being an ideal manifestation of the Aryan race. While this Cap had a long career fighting against the forces that wound up creating him, the weirdest twist came after this Steve Rogers died in battle, falling to multiple bullets. This version of Captain America was revived by the being Mar-Vell and turned into a member of the Avenging Host, a league of angels that sought to help the people of Earth cross over to the other side following their deaths. I know Steve Rogers has always been a good man, but becoming a literal angel? Definitely a bit of weirdness going on there, Marvel. Coming in at number 3, we have Captain Colonies. Throughout the Marvel multiverse, each universe has their own member of the Captain Britain Corps, a multiversal group that bands together to take on threats that one universe alone couldn't handle. While this character was mainly just used as a one-off joke appearance, the implication of Captain Colonies is that in this world, the American Revolution never happened, and thus Steve Rogers' transformation into Captain America instead kept him being allied with the British colonies. The flag on his costume may have changed, but hopefully Steve Rogers keeps all of his usual heroics. Coming in at number 2, we have the Ape Captain America from Earth 8101. That's right, you can't have a weird alternate versions list without at least a couple animal entries, and on this alternate Earth, everyone is a primate-based version of their original forms. While Steve Rogers in this reality was merely a very intelligent gorilla, he was actually frozen in ice as an act of betrayal by the vampire Baron Blood, who took his place and misled the Avengers into starting an ape civil war. Luckily, the true gorilla Steve Rogers was eventually freed and led the Ape Vengers once more after defeating Baron Blood once and for all. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the ghostly Captain America of Earth 7116. During the war in Afghanistan, a young soldier named James Newman believes his troop is saved by the sudden appearance of Captain America. However, when he asks his squad mates about the incident, they all seem to believe that it was James that accomplished their rescue. In this universe, Captain America is lying comatose under the surveillance of the US government, but is somehow sending out his spirit to American war zones in need and possessing soldiers in order to keep them safe. This is definitely the weirdest power set that Steve Rogers has ever been depicted having, and it's honestly one of the odder interpretations of Captain America's status as a member of the US military. I mean, weird possessing soldier ghosts? You gotta draw the line somewhere, Marvel. Starting off our list with an honorable mention at number 10, we have Captain Carter. Normally, I'd put my girl Peggy higher up on any list, but since she's less weird and more awesome, we've gotta put her here. Captain Carter actually originally debuted in the Marvel Puzzle Quest video game during a celebration for Captain America's 75th anniversary, but was given a fully fleshed out backstory and has been a fan favorite ever since. In a universe where Steve Rogers is assassinated before he can be given the super soldier serum, Peggy Carter is instead the one who becomes an incredibly strong and iconic hero for the Allied forces. The comics would continue her adventures, with her universe's New York City coming under attack with nuclear weapons by the Red Skull, and eventually lead to her joining the superhero team the Exiles after their multiverse-spanning adventures brought them into contact. Next up on our list is the center point for one of the most controversial Marvel storylines of all time, the infamous Hydra Cap. Initially appearing to be the main Marvel Universe's Captain America, this version of Steve Rogers had grown up indoctrinated by Hydra's fascist ideologies and was actually sent to America to kill the creator of the superhuman serum for the Axis powers, but instead wound up deceiving his way into receiving the serum himself. Having wound up in the main Marvel Universe when their Steve Rogers was rejuvenated back to his usual age in a different storyline, this Hydra Cap was able to hide his evil intentions until the pivotal moment that he declared to the world those shocking words, "Hail Hydra." Seeing one of comics' most inspiring icons twisted in such a way was definitely unexpected, and definitely earns a surprising spot on this list. Coming in at number 8, we have the blood-sucking vampire Cap. In a universe where Captain America fought and then lost against the villain Baron Blood, soon the entire Avengers team was overtaken by his vampiric disease. Consumed with a lust for both blood and power, this Steve Rogers began a year-long killing spree that culminated in killing Baron Blood and taking his place as the new Vampire King. This version had all of the benefits of the Super Soldier Serum, in addition to new vampire abilities such as healing so advanced, he was able to survive getting decapitated when facing off against several other Marvel heroes. I guess going for the head isn't as effective as we all thought. At number 7, we have Ultimate Captain America, a character that probably wasn't intended to be read as weird when first created, but has since turned out to be a bit more of a unique interpretation of the character. Notably more destructive, assertive, and just a bit grumpier than most other interpretations of Steve Rogers, he could be seen as a different interpretation of American patriotism than more classical versions of the character take from. In another wild and tragic twist, this Cap's version of Red Skull is actually his literal son, the result of his last night with his World War II era girlfriend, Gail Richards. Completely unknown about by Steve and born after he was frozen in ice, the baby was taken by the military and grew up in foster care. Growing up with an inferiority complex, this child would eventually scar himself and become the criminal mastermind, the Red Skull. Talk about a messed up family, Steve. Coming in at number 6, it's Steve Rogers. No wait, it's Stephen Strange. No wait again, it's actually Steven Rogers, Soldier Supreme. In a pocket dimension known as Warp World, where every soul of the Marvel Universe has been merged with that of another, Doctor Strange and Captain America were DNA digivolved into the combined form of the Soldier Supreme. In this unique part of the multiverse, the superhuman experiments done by the Allies during World War II were achieved through magic instead of science, with the weak and scrawny Steven Rogers being taught the ways of dark magic and learning powerful sorcery. With a best friend known as Bucky Wong, a literal winter soldier after he becomes a ghost, this combo of characters is definitely a standout in a multiverse full of standouts. At number 5, we've got the alternate future showstopper of Danielle Cage, the Captain America of the future. The grown-up child of both Jessica Jones and Luke Cage on Earth 15061, Danielle has taken up the mantle of Captain America in a Manhattan where climate change makes flooding incredibly frequent and gangs roam the streets. With her own arch nemesis in the form of the Golden Skull, Danielle Cage is also one of the physically strongest Captain Americas throughout the multiverse, inheriting both the strength-based power sets of her parents and letting her yeet that red and blue shield as hard as it's ever been thrown before. Coming in at number 4, we've got a bit of a change of rank with Colonel America, aka Zombie Cap. In a world where an infected sentry brings a zombie plague from beyond the stars, and also where Steve Rogers has achieved the rank of Colonel and the presidency of the United States, America's hero is bidden along with many of the Avengers when they try to contain the sentry situation. The Colonel is even the one to eventually bite Spider-Man on the shoulder when the younger hero tries to help. This zombified version of Steve Rogers retains all of his powers and more, surviving with half of his brain exposed until he was finally defeated by his enemy the Red Skull during a final battle over who gets to devour the corpse of Galactus. Definitely some very, very weird stuff. At number 3, we've got another character with a Dragon Ball Z style fusion in the form of Clark Kent, the Super Soldier. And no, this didn't suddenly switch over to a DC Comics themed video. In the Amalgam universe, where the Marvel and DC multiverses have been compressed and combined into one unified world by the megaversal beings known as the Brothers, Super Soldier is the result of mixing the backstories of both Captain America and Superman. Clark Kent is a young man from Kansas who winds up receiving his powers of strength, heat vision, and flight not from being a Kryptonian, but by volunteering for the Super Soldier program to help America during the Second World War, a process which is spied on by a very mischievous Jimmy Olsen. He would go on to fight the leader of Hydra, a version of Lex Luthor, and Super Metallo, a combination of Metallo and Red Skull's usual brand of killer robots. Double the trouble, double the fun. Coming in at number 2, we've got a version of Captain America that doesn't even need America. That's right, it's Captain Avalon. Coming from a Marvel universe inspired by classic sword and sorcery fantasy, this version of Cap is merely called Stevan until his son, funnily enough named Stevan Jr., is kidnapped by the Dreadlord, an evil alternate version of Baron Zemo. While he doesn't appear to have any actual magical abilities or equivalents to the super soldier formula, Captain Avalon is a brave knight at the peak of human condition, and his red and blue shield still brings the core of this classic character to light, even if America doesn't really exist in this Game of Thrones style world. And finally, coming in at the top spot for our weirdest alternate versions of Captain America, we have a choice that's not even human. That's right, it's Captain Americat. Hailing from Earth 8311, the very same world that's home to the spectacular Spider-Ham, this version of Cap is named Stephen Mouser, leads a group of superpowered animals known as the Scavengers, and in another groan-inducing animal pun, most notably led them into battle against the supervillain Moltron. While his appearances have mostly been related to side stories compared to Spider-Ham's main adventures, Captain Americat is definitely the oddest version of Steve Rogers that we've yet to see in the Marvel multiverse.